What's up YouTube, Dale here from Zephyr, and today, following on from yesterday's upgraded Chronicle deck profile, I thought the next logical step would be to bring you some basic combos so you have everything you need to know to take this deck to your local environment this weekend and pilot it like a branded god. So, I'm going to take you through some very simple combos, and we're going to be starting off with probably the most baseline combo you want to be working for, and that is going to be a Luba, Jester, Despia, and then any discard. Now, keeping in mind, this will be our starting hand of 5, so the other additional discards you will have will just make your plays a little bit more consistent. But on top of that as well, you have more ways to get to a Luba with branded opening, and if you do open up any of the cards I show you throughout this combo route, it just gives you another line to search, which is going to be really, really cool. So starting off with the base line of what you have available to you, we're going to normal summon down the Luba. Use Luba's effect to get you probably the best branded card in existence, being the Branded Fusion. Now, as mentioned previously, if you already hard open up a Branded Fusion, you can choose to go for either a Branded Opening, you can go for a Branded Lost, you can go for a Fallen and the Virtuous. You've got so many more different targets, you're just going to be adding more resource to your hand, which sets up more discard plays. So we're going to be able to activate our Branded Fusion. You're going to send 2 from the deck to the grave, being the Bestial Lubellion and being your Fallen of Albaz. Now again, the exact same thing happens. If you hard open up the Bestial Lubellion, you can just send a Cartasia, which will allow to come back to the hand during the end phase, which is absolutely fine. And then you just discard your Lubellion from the hand to grab your Saranir, and you're extending your plays even more. So it's not as if, oh, I've opened up a Lubellion, this combo's completely dead. You're still in a very, very good position. So the card you're going to want to summon from the edge deck is going to be Albion the Branded Dragon. Then you're going to use Albion the Branded Dragon's effect to banish your Albaz and your Luba Jester of Despia from the field to get you into your Lubellion. Now it's at this point here where the discard is going to come into play, because you're now going to need to discard off of back of Lubellion to discard that random card in your hand, doesn't matter which one, and you're going to want to put your Lubellion back into the extra deck, and you're going to want to put your banished Albaz back into the deck, and in doing so, this is going to get you direct access to your Mac Daddy boss monster, being your Mirror Jade, the Iced Blade Dragon. Now you use Lubellion's effect to tribute off a level 6 or higher Dark Dragon, being your Albion, putting it in the graveyard exactly where you want it. You can now use Lubellion's effect to place you a Branded Lost face up on the field, and this is going to make it a little bit more awkward for your opponent to interact with you and then net you some resources every time you fusion summon. Now, as we move to the end phase, this end field probably doesn't look that impressive from the outset, but remember, you still have technically 3 cards left in your hand, but we're still going to be doing a lot more. You're going to want to use Mirror Jade's effect, and the Mirror Jade effect is going to send Titaniclad from your extra deck to the graveyard to banish your own Lubellion. Now, the reason you do this is Lubellion's pretty much done its entire job of the build. You want to get to the Branded Lost. Once you've got to that, your Lubellion is pretty much just free fodder, which is what we're seeing here. Now, once we move to the end phase, a lot of stuff is going to start to trigger because we've now sent Titaniclad. And the one thing you need to remember about Mirror Jade is Mirror Jade's effect can only be activated every other turn. So what that means is, as we've used Mirror Jade's effect now during our turn, in theory, if this Mirror Jade was to stay on the field, we couldn't use this effect during our opponent's turn. However, if we are to get rid of it and reborn it, it's refreshed and its effect can be used during our opponent's turn, or technically can be used during your turn again if you wish to. So, how are we going to do that? Well, that's exactly where the Titaniclad comes into play. So the Titaniclad is going to special summon your Guiding Quem, the Virtuous, from the deck. Now, for those of you that are a little bit unfamiliar with the way that the branded strategy works, Titaniclad during the end phase will let you special summon a Dogmatica or a Fallen of Albaz from the deck. But wait, Guiding Quem the Virtuous doesn't actually say Dogmatica in the name. How are we able to special summon it? Well, this comes down to the first line of text on the card. This card is always treated as a Dogmatica and a Despia card, meaning that even though it doesn't say Dogmatica in its name, it's always treated as one, so we can get to it very, very easily. Now, that's going to be very relevant to the next card we're going to want to try and get access to, because it also shares that same line of text, just with different names. So we're going to try and resolve our Albion the Branded Dragon on the new chain after we have resolved the Guiding Quem to send a Fallen of Albaz from the deck to the graveyard. Now, it's quite important to have Fallen of Albaz in the graveyard. You can get Cartasia there if you wish to, as it lets you send a Fallen of Albaz or a card that mentions it from the deck to the graveyard. The benefit of something like that is that as long as you can send a fusion monster to the graveyard, you'll be able to add back the Cartasia for more resource. The reason you want Albaz there is if you do work your way into a Rindbrum, that will then allow you to, or send a Rindbrum during your opponent's turn off of the back of the Mirror Jade. That will then allow you to bring back the Albaz, discard a card, and then fuse into a card that isn't Mirror Jade if it's still on the field, because you can only control one, or it can go into a Lubellion or an Albion. So you're in a very good place, or maybe even a Titaniclad should you want to play more. That being said, we're now going to try and resolve our Albion in the graveyard to grab us a branded spell or trap. Now, we're going to want to grab hold of the Fallen and the Virtuous. Now, just like with Guiding Quem, this one has the same line of text at the start, but it is always treated as a branded and a Dogmatica card. So even though your Albion says right at the bottom, you get to set a branded spell or trap or add it to your hand, even though the Fallen and Virtuous doesn't say branded in its text, it has it in its text box and it's always treated as branded, so you get to add it to the hand. Now, the reason you want to add it to the hand is, remember, this Mirror Jade's effect is not live during our opponent's turn, so we need to get it off the field and then back on the field. How are we going to do that? Well, we're actually going to activate the Fallen and the Virtuous during the end phase of our turn still. Remember, we're still in the end phase, which is crazy. So this will let us send a monster that mentions Fallen of Albaz from our extra deck to the graveyard to target a face-up card on the field, being our own Mirror Jade, and destroy it. So we're going to send the brand new, the Dragon that Devours the Dogma, and then destroy our Mirror Jade, the Iceblade Dragon. Now, as we resolve all of this, we'll be able to resolve the Guiding Quem as a monster was sent from the extra deck to the graveyard to target a monster in our graveyard that mentions Fallen of Albaz and bring it back. So, hello, Mirror Jade. We're going to recycle the Mirror Jade, and as it is technically treated as a fresh card, its effect is now back online so that we can use it during our opponent's turn. But don't worry, we are not done there. We have one more to resolve. We're going to resolve the end phase effect of the Dragon that Devours the Dogma. So the end phase effect of this one is if it is in the graveyard because it was sent there this turn, you get to add a Dogmatica or a Tri-Brigade card from the deck to the hand. What do we want to add? Well, we're going to add our Tri-Brigade Mokoria. And the reason we're going to be doing that is because we control a fusion monster that mentions Fallen of Albaz, we technically now have another negate set up off of the back of the Tri-Brigade Mokoria. So we have 3 random cards in our hand, as this is our opening hand. We have a Tri-Brigade Mokoria, which can negate one of our opponent's monster effects. Really, really good. We've got Mirror Jade that can send a card from the extra deck to the graveyard, and the one you're going to want to send on this one will be the Rindbrum. We then also have Guiding Quem that can revive if we want to, but honestly, I would hold that back until you get rid of your own Mirror Jade, or maybe even your opponent gets rid of the Mirror Jade. Because in doing so, now what that opens up the door to is that when we want to, we can activate the Rindbrum effect in the graveyard to banish itself and bring back Albaz. Albaz can then use its own effect using one of the additional discards in our hand, or Mokoria if you really, really want to. And that will then allow us to fuse into another monster, but we won't be able to go into a Mirror Jade because you can only control one of that monster. If you're playing more Titaniclads, you can get rid of any monster that has 2500 or more attack. You then also have the other options for you. So you've got Sprind if you want to be able to use a monster that was special summon that turn. And you've also got Brigand if you want to utilize one of them as well. So a very nice disruptive field, all from 1.5 cards, because you need that discard. And then if you have another discard in the hand, your Albaz becomes another line of disruption. And it does also force that if they clear off this Mirror Jade, you have 2 ways of bringing it back. 1 being your Guiding Quem, and 2 being the Albaz to then fuse with your opponent's monster. And then the Albaz, the Mirror Jade's effect will then be back online. So you've got a lot to go for you, not to mention that if you do fuse with Fallen of Albaz, you get to search a card off the back of Branded Loss, which can be Cartasia, and we already know that discarding Cartasia is not a bad thing because it can come back to the hand during the end phase if a monster is sent from the extra deck, if a fusion monster is sent to the graveyard. So you're in a very, very good position at that particular moment in time. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to reset this, and I'm going to show you another variation of this combo, or another variation for the branded combos. So you're getting a little bit more information to kind of go and pilot this deck as best as possible. So we'll be back in a second. For the second combo, I'm going to show you how you can utilize the Fallen and the Virtuous as a defensive option to allow your Aluba to dodge pretty much all targeted effects in the game. So you're going to start off by normal summoning down your Aluba, and then your opponent is going to respond by trying to utilize something like a Infinite Impermanence, an Effect Failure, or even just a disruptive targeted effect that you still want your Aluba access to. So for example, if they activated a target effect that would banish it, you still want it in the graveyard as you're going to need to use it as fusion material. So you're going to chain your Fallen and the Virtuous. This is going to allow you to send from the extra deck to the graveyard a Titaniclad, and the reason you're going to want to send the Titaniclad is because that will set you up your Quem during the end phase. You're going to be able to target to destroy your Aluba, and then still resolve your Aluba as it dodged the targeted effect, and it's going to get you direct access to your Branded Fusion. We're then going to activate the Branded Fusion, and pretty much the exact same steps on this one. You're going to want to send your Fallen of Albaz and your Bestial Lubellion from the deck to the grave to get you access to your Albion. You're then going to use Albion's effect to banish from the graveyard, and again you're going to want to send or banish your Albaz, and you're going to want to banish your Aluba. Now, if you want to go down a branded in red route, you would actually sacrifice your Titaniclad by banishing that and leaving the Aluba in the graveyard, which would mean you would have a Despia in the graveyard that could be summoned, added back, off of the back of the branded in red. So that is one option for you, but because the Quem is actually really quite important to get you some resource, we're going to banish the Aluba instead. This will then get you into the Lubellion. We're going to use Lubellion's effect to discard the random card in our hand, and this will then allow us to fuse by putting itself back into the extra deck and the Albaz that is banished back into the main deck to get us access to our Mac Daddy boss monster in the form of Mirror Jade. Then use the Grave effect of Lubellion to bring itself back by tributing off the Albion, and we're pretty much in the exact same state we were previously. So use Bestial Lubellion's effect to place the branded in Lost. You can use Mirror Jade's effect if you wanted to. That would then allow you to afford to banish the Titaniclad to leave the Despia in the graveyard. And what you would send is you just, rather than sending Titaniclad, you can send any Dark monster from your extra deck to the grave. So you're still in a very good position. Now we move to the end phase, and in the end phase, we're going to be able to trigger off Titaniclad and Albion. So start off with one or the other. So we'll go with the Titaniclad first. This is going to allow us to summon out our Quem. Quem's effect will then send a Cartasia from the deck to the graveyard. Now we're going to be able to resolve the Albion. The Albion is then going to allow us to grab Branded in High Spirits, and then we're going to be able to resolve the Cartasia as a fusion monster was sent to the graveyard this turn to add it back to the hand. Still in our end phase, because the Branded in High Spirits is a quick play, we're going to be able to activate this, revealing a monster in our hand, and then sending a level 8 fusion monster from our extra deck to the grave with the same type with 2500 or more attack. So all you need to do is reveal a spellcaster, and the one you pretty much go for more times than not is going to be your Grand Grignol. I know, looks like a dragon, it's called Dust Dragon, but it's a spellcaster. So we're going to send that to the graveyard. This will then, of course, allow us to then send the Cartasia, and in doing so, we get to add a Fallen of Albaz or a monster that mentions it. So the one you're going to want to go for to set you up with the most defense during your opponent's turn is going to be your Tri-Brigade Mokoria, because you could technically add a Fallen of Albaz, but you kind of want to go for the Mokorias. That's going to be your most defensive option. The Branded in High Spirits goes to the graveyard, and then because a monster was sent from the extra deck to the graveyard, being the Grand Grignol, we get to bring back the Blazing Cartasia. And what we've got here is you've got the Mokoria negate. We've got the Blazing Cartasia effect to fusion summon, and usually what you'd want to do is leave the Quem alone, leave that where she is. Use the Mirror Jade effect first, send any of the cards from your extra deck to the graveyard, like an Albion to get a reset. You can send a Rinbrum if you're able to get an Albaz back into the graveyard, which shouldn't be that hard to do. So whichever one you want to do. Then use your Blazing Cartasia's effect to fuse. These would then usually, more times than not, use the Mirror Jade to fuse it off. Go into, again, pretty much whatever you have legal access to from your extra deck. Sometimes you do like to go into, if you use a Dark, like you don't always need to use Cartasia. You can also go into, you can also work your way into a Predaplant Dracus Depelia. But in this scenario, you just basically work your way into a Grand Grignol. You'll be able to go Chenic 1 Quem, Chenic 2 Grand Grignol. Grand Grignol would then be able to send your Albaz to the graveyard. This would then allow you to revive off of the back of Quem your Mirror Jade. You've then fusion summons. You also get to trigger off the Branded Lost as well. I think it would be Chenic 3, and that kind of protects everything you need to. So I can set you up an Albaz for the follow-up. You can set you up any monster that mentions Fallen of Albaz. So probably even go for an Eclodial Ecclesia if you wanted to. And then we still maintain the monster that mentions Albaz on the field in the form of the Mokoria. And then just to set you up with another line of disruption, you're going to be able to utilize your Mirror Jade effect. You're going to send the Rinbrum. This now gives you another way to get into another Mirror Jade should they out this. And what we mean by that is, we still have the Grand Grignol effect in the grave, or the one on the field if you want to clear up a bit of space to special summon something like your Despian Quinterius or your Proskynian if you wanted to. But you've also got the Rinbrum that can banish itself, bring back the Albaz. Ooh. And then Albaz now has the effect, so we can discard this Incredible Ecclesia, which we'll be able to add back in the end phase anyway, to then fuse with our Albaz plus one of our opponent's monsters. Now, again, keeping in mind, you can only control one Mirror Jade, so while this stays on the field, you won't be able to go into that one. But if your opponent does have a light or dark plus an effect monster, you can work your way nicely into the Dragon that Devours the Dogma, which can be quite disruptive if they're playing a light and dark style deck. Or you just keep it very, very simple and just go for an Albion or a Lubellion. So still in a very good position here. And that's pretty much it. So these are just 2 baseline combos. If you want to see more combos, there's loads of videos online, so I highly implore you go and check those out. Some of these are basic, all revolving around Albion. Some also revolve around Branded High Spirits, what happens if you just open up Branded Fusion, and just kind of loads of different options from that way. But I've kind of taken up like 15 minutes of your time, giving you 2 combos, but I wanted to give you as much depth and detail with these combos as possible, so you know why we are searching those particular cards during the end phase, why we are sending those particular cards from the extra deck to the graveyard to maximize your usage. So rather than just going through a combo and going, okay, so step 1, send this, step 2, do this, step 3, do that, you now know why you're doing that. We do step 1 because we want to get this in the end phase. We do step 2 because by doing step 1, we've been able to get to step 2, which is going to give us a double search in the end phase. We're going to be able to add back a card from the graveyard because we did step 3, and so on and so forth. So hopefully this combo has been in huge amounts of details for you, giving you an idea of how the deck wants to function, how it functions, and how you basically utilize the brand new cards, because the new cards are just really, really cool. The Fallen of the Virtuous and the Dogmatica, the Branded that devours the Dogmatica, the Dragon that devours the Dogma, is really, really kind of cool and gives you a lot to work with. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share. Any questions at all, by all means, comments down below. I'm always happy to answer them. For now, as absolutely always, stay safe and, of course, happy dueling.